I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, spilling the whole mess. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. We seemed like the perfect couple, stable, successful, happy on the surface. We had a nice house in the suburbs, good jobs, and a pretty comfortable life. I always thought we had a solid foundation, but I guess I was wrong about that. Things started feeling off a few months ago, little things. Lisa, been more snappish, snapping at me for no reason, and she's been secretly busy with her phone all the time. She'd hide her screen when I'd walk into the room, and sometimes I'd catch her deleting texts or calling someone from a blocked number. I brushed it off for a while, thinking maybe she was stressed about work or something. But then I noticed the bank statements. Small withdrawals here and there, offshore transfers I didn't recognize, all managed through our joint accounts. Nothing too big at first, just little suspicious expenses that didn't add up. I didn't say anything immediately. I figured I'd keep an eye on it. One day, I decided to dig a little deeper because I kept feeling uneasy. I requested a detailed ledger of our recent transactions, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were transfers to offshore accounts, accounts I'd never heard of, and they weren't just regular savings or investment accounts. These were being siphoned off almost daily, and the amounts weren't huge individually, but together, they added up to a significant chunk of our retirement savings. That's when I put it together. Lisa was in on it. She wasn't just hiding texts or lying about where she was going. She was actively stealing from our future. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted implicitly, was cheating, financially and emotionally. That night, I sat her down, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. I asked her outright about the transfers, about the offshore accounts, about what she's been doing behind my back. She looked at me with that icy, bitchy smirk and told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. She said it was all a mistake, some kind of mix-up. She told me I was being insecure and accused me of not trusting her, which I found almost laughable considering how she's been sneaking around. But her words didn't matter anymore. The evidence was there, staring right back at me from the bank statements, the offshore account details, the suspicious transfers. I felt a rush of anger I'd never experienced before, not just at her betrayal but at myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her blindly for all these years. I was furious that she'd betray me like this, that she'd screw over our future for some affair or some game with her damn financial advisor. That's right, the guy managing our retirement savings, Jeff. Turns out, she'd been seeing him on the side, and they'd been working together to drain what little we had left in the name of some stupid, selfish scheme. I didn't even want to think about how long this had been going on, but the proof was right there in the numbers. I remember sitting there, feeling my chest tighten, my hands trembling as I looked at all the evidence. The betrayal hit me hard, and not just the betrayal, but the fact that she'd lied so effortlessly, so convincingly. She promised me she loved me, that she was committed. And then she's out there screwing around with my financial advisor, trying to wipe us out. I thought I knew her, thought we were in this together. But now I wasn't sure I knew anything about her anymore. And I sure as hell knew I wasn't going to let her get away with it. After I confronted Lisa that night, everything changed in an instant. Her face twisted into something ugly, defensive, contemptuous, like I was some fool who just figured out she'd been cheating on me all along. She tried to deny, of course. Said I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that Jeff was just a friend and the transfers must have been some kind of mistake. That's what she kept saying, mistake, accident, misunderstanding, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen the proof and I knew better than to trust her bullshit anymore. She started yelling, throwing around words like paranoid, jealous, unstable, saying I was ruining everything for her. She told me I was overreacting and that I needed to calm down, that she deserved some space, that I was suffocating her with my accusations. But her words felt hollow. I could see the anger behind her eyes, the disdain she had for me. That's when I realized she couldn't deny it anymore. The mask was slipping. She was caught and she knew it. I didn't shout back. I just stood there staring at her, cold and silent, while my mind raced. Inside, I was a storm of emotions: hurt, rage, betrayal, confusion. I'd always thought Lisa was my partner, my confidant, someone I could trust with everything. And now I saw her for what she really was, somebody willing to screw us over for her own selfish interests. And Jeff, that bastard, was just as guilty. I remembered his smug face when I'd seen his name on the bank account details. He was supposed to be my advisor, someone I trusted to handle our retirement, and he'd turned into her accomplice. The worst part, I didn't even know how long this had been going on. Weeks, months, years. All I knew was that our future, our security, was being drained away right under my nose, and I'd been too blind or too trusting to see it. That realization hit me harder than anything. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, like I'd been living a lie, and the rug had been pulled out from under my feet. After she stormed off into the bedroom, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the laptop still open on the table. I couldn't believe it. How the hell did I not see this coming? Lisa had always been bitchy, yes, and she'd lie to get her way, but I never thought she'd do something like this. I kept feeling the sting of betrayal, the emptiness of knowing someone I loved and trusted had turned out to be my biggest enemy. That's when I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't let her get away with screwing us over, not just financially but emotionally too. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, loyalty, and the life I thought we had. I pulled out my phone and started digging into her emails, her phone logs, anything I could find. I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. That's when I found the emails, dozens of messages between her and Jeff, talking about closing the deal, offshore accounts, siphoning funds. I read through them, my stomach turning with every line. They'd been planning it for months, maybe longer. Jeff even had the nerve to talk about keeping it discreet, not raising suspicion, as if they were some kind of team working against me. The shock turned into pure, raw rage. I'd always been a cautious guy but never paranoid. I'd trusted Lisa with everything, our money, our future, my sanity. And she'd betrayed me so thoroughly it's like I'd been living on a different planet. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I decided I'd have to confront her again, face to face, and demand answers. But this time I'd be ready. I wasn't just gonna scream or shout, I was going to lay everything out on the table and see how she'd spin her lies then. I knew I couldn't stay quiet. Not anymore. The shock had settled, replaced by this burning need for justice, no revenge. That's what this was turning into. I'd been played, used, and left in the dust. And the worst part, I didn't even know if I wanted to save the marriage anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to decide what to do next, and fast. The next morning I woke up with that heavy sensation in my chest, like a stone sitting right there. The kind of feeling you get when you realize everything you believed in has just been shattered. I knew I couldn't ignore what I'd uncovered. The evidence was too clear, too damning. I also knew that if I didn't act now, she'd just keep draining us, keep lying, keep cheating. So I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I'd be prepared. I needed a plan, a way to finally get her to admit everything, or at least see her cornered. I got up early, before she was even awake, and started pulling together all the proof I had. The bank statements, the emails, text messages. I downloaded everything into a secure folder on my laptop, making sure I had copies in case she tried to delete or hide anything. I also called a friend of mine who's a private investigator. I didn't want to do something stupid or impulsive. I wanted to cover all my bases. The investigator told me he could dig deeper into the offshore accounts, track the transfers more precisely, and even gather some evidence of the scheme. It was expensive, but I didn't care. I was done playing nice. When Lisa finally got up, she was still acting bitchy, like she had nothing to hide. She was throwing around her usual attitude, trying to brush me off, pretending she didn't see the way I was glaring at her. I kept my composure, but inside I was boiling. I told her I needed to talk, and she rolled her eyes and said she was tired of my accusations, that I was obsessing over nothing. That's when I laid it out, showed her the email trail, the bank statements. I told her I knew everything, that I knew about her affair with Jeff and how they'd been stealing from us. Her face turned white for a second, then she started laughing, a high-pitched laugh that sounded fake and forced. Are you serious? You think I'd do something so stupid? She spat, trying to act like I was crazy, but I didn't buy it. I kept pushing, asking her how she could do this to me, to our future. She scoffed, said it was all just a misunderstanding, that Jeff was just giving her advice, that she never meant to hurt me, that she needed the money, that she was desperate, that she was tired of my paranoia and insecurities. But I saw through her lies. I could see the anger, the contempt, the way she looked at me like I was some fool who'd finally lost his mind. That's when I told her I'd hired the pie, that I was going to get every bit of proof I needed, and that she'd regret ever crossing me. She snapped, called me a jealous psycho, said I was ruining everything, that I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat in such a way. She tried to turn it around to make me feel guilty, but I just shook my head. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative, so ready to screw me over for her own petty reasons. I'd tolerated a lot, but this was the end. As I left the house that morning, I felt cold, numb almost. I knew I had to face the reality that this marriage might be over. I'd been betrayed, not just by her, but by the person I thought I knew. I wondered how long she'd been lying, months, years. I kept thinking about all those moments I'd trusted her, confided in her, shared my dreams with her, and she'd been secretly working against me. It was a crushing blow. While I waited for the pie to gather more evidence, I also started thinking about what I really wanted. Part of me still loved her, part of me wanted to believe she'd come clean and we'd fix this. But deep down, I knew that trust was broken, maybe beyond repair. I was angry, hurt, and confused, all at the same time. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to find the moment I could have caught her sooner, done something different. But mostly I felt like I'd been blind, and now I had to decide if I could ever forgive her, or if I needed to do something more drastic. The truth was, I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I needed a way to take back control, to stop her from screwing us over further. I wasn't sure what that looked like yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let her win. Whatever came next, I'd be ready for it. A few days passed, and in that time I stayed busy trying to process everything. I also stayed quiet, waiting for the pie to come back with more concrete evidence. Every hour I spent alone, I felt the weight of it all, the betrayal, the anger, the sense that I'd been played for a fool. I kept thinking about how Lisa always portrayed herself as the victim, how she lied so easily, how she acted like I was overreacting when I finally caught her. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she'd been manipulating me for months, maybe longer, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. It was the pie. He had everything I needed: detailed transaction records, proof that Jeff and Lisa had been transferring massive sums offshore, and even some recordings of their conversations. Some of it made my stomach churn. Jeff discussing how to drain our accounts without leaving a trail, and Lisa reassuring him she'd keep quiet. It was all there. Everything I needed to finally expose her for what she was. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough waiting. I sat her down again, this time with all the proof spread out on the table. I watched her face flicker through a range of emotions: defiance, panic, outright anger. She tried to deny everything again, accusing me of paranoia, of trust issues. But this time I didn't let her spin her lies. I pressed her hard, showing her the evidence, telling her I knew about the affair, the theft, everything. Her eyes widened in shock, then quickly narrowed into that bitchy glare that I hated so much. "You think you can just come in here and throw this at me?" She spat. "You're crazy. All of it's just a misunderstanding. Jeff's my friend, he's been helping me with stuff. You don't understand how complicated things are, you're just jealous." I shook my head slowly. "No, Lisa, this isn't just some misunderstanding. You and Jeff have been working together to rob me blind. I've got proof: emails, bank transfers, recordings. Do you want me to play them for you? Because I will. How could you do this? After everything, I trusted you." Her face went pale, then flushed with rage. She lashed out, accusing me of invading her privacy, of not trusting her, of being controlling. She called me insane and said I was ruining everything, that I was destroying the marriage over some stupid suspicion. But I knew better now. I saw her true face: bitchy, manipulative, willing to betray everything we had for her own selfish gain. I didn't care anymore about saving face or keeping her happy. All I wanted was the truth out in the open and to figure out what I'd do next. I told her she had two choices: come clean and tell me everything, or I was going to take legal action, go after her and cut her out of my life entirely. I was done playing nice. The anger inside me was bubbling over, and I knew I couldn't pretend anymore that this was just a little misunderstanding. It was far worse, an outright betrayal of everything I thought we stood for. She looked at me, eyes blazing with hatred, then scoffed and threw a glass across the room. "You think you're gonna ruin me? Good luck trying, because I'm not going down that easy." That's when I realized she was dangerous, more than just a lying, cheating wife. She was determined to fight, no matter what, and I knew then that I would have to be prepared for the fight of my life. As I sat there, watching her rage and denial, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally saw her for what she really was, nothing more than a selfish thief and a liar. Dread because I knew the worst was still ahead, that this wasn't just about uncovering the affair or the theft anymore. It was about how far she'd go to keep her lies hidden. I had to decide whether I was ready to fight for my life, my future, or whether I'd finally admit that some betrayals cut so deep that they destroy everything. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to decide her next move. I started making plans. I contacted a lawyer, one who specialized in divorce and financial crimes, and laid out everything I'd uncovered. I wanted to be ready for whatever was coming. I also reached out to a financial advisor friend of mine who helped me understand the full scope of the theft. The numbers were staggering: millions siphoned offshore, our retirement fund almost wiped out. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Lisa, of course, didn't let up. She doubled down on her lies, accusing me of ruining her life, of being paranoid, of trying to control her every move. She gasped, threw tantrums, and even tried crying to make herself look innocent. I couldn't believe how manipulative she was. This bitchy woman who had once been my partner, now trying to turn the tables, blame-shifting, crying wolf. But I'd done my homework, and I had the evidence to back everything up. I knew her game. She was just trying to manipulate me into backing off, but I was determined not to fall for it. Meanwhile, Jeff kept texting her, trying to reassure her that everything was fine, that he'd help her cover her tracks. I got hold of a few of those messages, and reading them was like a slap in the face. The guy had no shame. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. They talked about how to hide the money, how to make it look like legitimate expenses, and how to keep me in the dark. Jeff even told her how to use fake invoices, shell companies, everything. I felt sick reading it, like I'd been betrayed not just by Lisa but by the very people I'd trusted to help us secure our future. I made a decision. I was going to confront her one more time in a way that left no room for denial. I wanted her to see that I was serious about exposing her, about ending this nightmare. I planned to record the next conversation, to catch her in her lies. I wanted her to understand that she had gone too far, that there was no way back from what she'd done. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted her to come clean or if I just wanted her to admit she'd lost everything: our trust, our marriage, our financial future. The night before the final showdown, I sat alone in my office, going over everything one last time. I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. I was angry at her for betraying me, for stealing from us, for lying so effortlessly. But I was also sad, sad because I'd loved her, believed in her, and now it all felt like a lie. I kept thinking about the life we could have had, the future I'd planned, and how she'd just thrown it all away for her own selfish reasons. As I prepared to confront her again, I realized this wasn't just about money or infidelity. It was about respect, about whether I could ever trust her again. And deep down, I knew that if I stayed, I'd forever be looking over my shoulder, second-guessing everything. I had to ask myself, was I willing to forgive all this? Or was it better to cut my losses and start over? The decision was heavy, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let her destroy me without a fight. Not anymore. The confrontation I'd been planning finally came that night. I set up my phone to record everything, knowing that once I pressed play, there'd be no turning back. I wanted her to see that I wasn't bluffing. This was real, this was final. When she came into the room, she looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, as if I was the one overreacting again. But I didn't say a word. I just turned on the recorder and pushed play, letting her hear the evidence. Her own words, her lies, Jeff's plans to drain us dry. Her face twisted in disbelief, then panic, then outright fury. She tried to deny everything, to spin some new story, but I kept pushing her with the facts. The more she contradicted herself, the more her facade crumbled. She got defensive, screamed, then started crying, trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. But I'd seen enough. I wasn't falling for it. I told her she was done, that I was done, that I'd contact the authorities, that I was filing for divorce immediately. She shouted at me, called me names, accused me of ruining her life, of being cruel, controlling, paranoid. But I was numb now. All I could think about was how I'd trusted her with everything. Our money, our future, my heart, and she'd spit all over it. I looked her in the eyes and told her I was sick of her lies, sick of her cheating, and that I was done being a victim of her manipulations. I packed a bag that night and left. It was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made, but I knew I couldn't stay, not with her anymore, not after she'd betrayed me so completely. I went to stay with a friend and I filed for divorce a week later. The legal process was messy and emotional, but I knew it was the only way to get free from her shadow. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding. I took care of the financial mess she left behind, worked on my own mental health, and learned to trust myself again. The betrayal hurt more than I ever thought possible, but it also opened my eyes. I realized how important it is to stay vigilant, to trust but verify, and to never ignore those little warning signs. Lisa's bitchiness, her lies, her manipulations, they all added up to someone I never truly knew. Looking back, I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. I won't say I'm fully healed yet, that part of me still feels raw, but I am stronger now. I've moved on, not because I want revenge, but because I refuse to live under the shadow of betrayal anymore. Trust is earned and it's fragile. Never again will I take it for granted. So if you're out there reading this, just remember, pay attention to the signs, trust your gut, and don't be afraid to walk away if something feels wrong. Because some betrayals are so deep, so twisted, that they can destroy everything you've worked for. Protect yourself, stay alert, and never let anyone steal your future.